Zoom. Shing. G'day guys, Source20 here and welcome back to Cities Skylines Down Under. It is really good to be back working on the east coast of Australia on this map that I built about a month ago. And yes, I know it has been ages and I am dying to get back into it and start moving some people in, which is what today's episode is all about. Let me just give a quick refresher if you've totally forgotten all about this map. Basically, this is the east coast of Australia and I am pulling lots of inspiration from places that I travel up and down this coast, and this build in particular is based on Stockton in Newcastle. I visited this area a couple of months ago to see a friend and took some drone footage one morning, so I'm going to be referring to that quite a bit in today's episode. Also, this episode is mostly going to be a live play, so we're going to jump into that at about the 10-minute mark. And before I do get into that, and before I do get into the nitty-gritty of today's episode, I do need to name this area. And I put it to you guys in the last episode, what should I call this city and this area? And the big theme, the big idea that lots of people put to me was to actually name this area based on an Aboriginal name, which I think is really clever and a really great idea, because if you've ever driven around Australia, a lot of the names of towns are actually based on, or are actually the names of the indigenous land. So I'm going to stick with that, and I'm going to go for the Aboriginal name for Newcastle, which is Mullumbimba. But I do want to just change it just slightly, because I do want it to be a little bit more unique for this build. So I'm going to call it Mullumbin, and that actually means fern in the indigenous language of that area, which I think is pretty well fitted, seeing as we are kind of going for a Newcastle theme for this area. So that is now the official name of this area, Mullumbin. You can just ignore Kiama just down there for the name of the city just for the time being, because I just forgot to change it. And I probably don't even change it in the live play at the end. So just take my word for it. That's the name of the place. In terms of what I'm doing on screen, and I'm starting to plop down the first houses for this suburb. Now, I'm basing this off Stockton in Newcastle. Stockton is pretty separate from the main hub of Newcastle, the main city of Newcastle, because of this big river that is basically separating the two. However, you know, people usually get from Stockton to Newcastle via the bridge that we built not long ago, and also this ferry terminal that a lot of people can use to get over to the other side. So I'm going to be putting down a ferry at some point, because I think that is a very cool little addition to this area and makes it just a little bit more unique. And in terms of unique, Stockton is very interesting. And the thing that I really love about it is it's such a small little community that has these tiny weeny houses. However, you know, all around it, you're surrounded by these massive ships that are just coming in and out of this harbour in Newcastle. So, you know, you just constantly see these massive ships come through over these tiny weeny houses. And then also the city of Newcastle is just over there on a hill looming in the distance, and it's just such an interesting contrast between these tiny shacks that are barely changed within the last 100 years and such a vibrant modern city that is sort of a building all around it, and this little town that hasn't changed at all. So I worked in Asset Editor to create these style of houses and to also just make them a little bit more unique. And also, I don't know if you can tell on the screen right now, but there are these very thin back alleys in between each block. And that is something that is really very cool about Stockton when you're walking around the streets. You can see these backlots everywhere, and you can kind of snake your way around these suburbs just down these pathways. So I'll be working on that a little bit during the live play, which is kind of creeping up on us. And you know, I think you've seen me use this style before, this way of placing down these suburbs, and it's pretty much just copying each of these buildings and placing them where I think they best fit. So you know, I'm doing that quite a lot, trying to place down these buildings as uniquely as possible, but also I'm not too worried if, you know, the same building is next to the exact same copy of it. In terms of like just getting the job done, I've spoken about this heaps, but I just wanted to place down as much of a suburb as possible in this episode. So every now and again, you might see the exact same building right next to it, but there is quite a bit of uniqueness as well. So I love the way that this suburb turned out. It's got some really interesting features, and it is quite unique because even in Australia, I don't ever really see that many suburbs that look exactly like Stockton. It is a very interesting suburb to wander around. So if you're looking at this episode and thinking Australian suburbs are very interesting and very different, well, this is not a classic Australian suburb. This is actually a very unique suburb in its own way. Also, just a little bit about this series. I really sort of dropped off building in Cities Skylines Down Under in this series, and I really hated the fact that I wasn't able to build on it for so long. What I think I'm going to do, and I'm going to be working on this for a little while, is I'm going to try and work on projects within this series. So for instance, I'm going to be working on this suburb for the next probably about 5 episodes, and I'm going to work on it pretty solidly and try to get most of it recorded before I start releasing any of the episodes. So that way you'll watch as I establish this suburb, and you know that the next episode will be within at least a week. I would like to release as much of these episodes back to back as possible. To make that possible, I'm going to make the episodes a lot shorter than I usually do. I'm going to try and to reduce it down to about 15 minutes. This one isn't 15 minutes, I went over, but the next episode for this will be a much shorter episode. And that way I can actually start, really pushing out lots of episodes and kind of keep you guys informed with what we're kind of building on. And that way, if I do drop off with this series, you know that at least we have built this suburb and you have had a decent dose of this map. And then I can kind of move on to maybe Broken Hill and do the exact same thing. Work on a suburb for, 3 episodes, or work on a particular theme. And that way we kind of work in these projects and you can kind of continue to keep track of what we're up to and what we're building on. So I hope that works for you. That is my plan. There's gonna be so many more of these episodes just around the corner. So, I hope you're interested in enjoying what we are building right now. But the live play is just around the corner. So I'm gonna shut up and I'm going to let future me take over. Hey guys, welcome to the live portion of today's video. So pretty much wanted to do this because I wanted to show you and I wanted to build some extra bits and pieces for this area. Now, as I scroll on in, you are going to notice a massive drop in FPS. It is so sad because we are pretty much on a brand new map and I've already totally destroyed the FPS. If you don't want to see it, close your eyes for the next 5 seconds, but here we go, we're going in. It's just so bad. Oh my god. It's so bad. And pretty much it's because there is just so much in these areas. There's not even that many props in terms, like I've barely plopped down any extra props. They all exist within the asset. So it's crazy how bad it gets. I might need to make some, computer upgrades or something. We're not going to focus on this area for the live play because it's just too bad. I'm going to save it for the cinematics where I can really just play with all those settings. For now, let's focus on areas where I'm getting a much smoother FPS. Much better. All right. Basically what I've done, and I think I might have spoken about this in the time lapse. I haven't recorded that bit yet, but pretty much placed down the same building over and over again because essentially Stockton is like that. There is very much the same sort of building, these little cottages. And I've changed a lot of the details up in Asset Editor and, just to create a bit of uniqueness. However, of course, there is some, repetition. It's kind of not really the point of this area. I wanted it to just get a really big chunk of a suburb down. I have changed up a couple of areas you might have seen me doing on the time lapse. For instance, this little corner over here is pretty much for larger style houses. Some are the old Victorian houses, which are like these ones here. We still have some of those smaller cottages, but we're also getting some new development as well. So I wanted to establish that within this area. Look, I've probably talked about all this stuff in the time lapse, so I'm going to focus on developing more of this area because I do want to move some people into this district at the very end of this episode, but it's not completed. We do need some services, we need some shops, we need just a couple of other areas to finish it off. Before I do get into... No, let's get into that now. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start placing down a pub that's going to sit on this corner. This main road here is really cool. I really love how this main road looks in Stockton, so I want to try and get that feel as much as possible. So I've just been playing... I have been figuring out what sort of a pub I'm going to place down in this corner. And I think I'm going to have to splice a couple of buildings together just so I can get the shape totally right. So I think I'm going to use... Yeah, I'm going to use this pub here. And I'm going to splice him into some other buildings just to make it a little bit bigger. Because these hotels are quite big. They're not... These tiny little pubs that you see like this, they're going to take up quite a bit of the block, especially with the outdoor seating areas. I mean, this is pretty much, there's not that many pubs that lie around Stockton, so I do want the ones that are here to be fairly decent. I might even try and splice them in even more. And then I'm going to place down like an outdoor seating area around there. Okay, so I've been working on this area for about half an hour, and actually, let me just get into, much prefer this perspective. I've put heaps of detail into this pub. Let me just show you a couple of things. So, splice those buildings into just one, and I think it turned out pretty cool. And also added this awning, and I really love the rust look to it because most of these awnings are super rusty. And I also added just one on the back because a lot of these pubs have some shelter for people who are at the back of the pub, and I just sort of added a couple of bits of detail. For instance, this planter here, I love these planters so much, but I think that looks really cool. It's kind of got this older style feel to it, which is what I was kind of going for. And then I also decided to detail the rest of this area, just adding in a couple of different custom houses. So these ones are all being placed down with props and stuff like that. For instance, this house here is just like a little house. I really love its little details, and I love how these garages just back up to these really old, worn out alleyways, and I just love it. And I really feel sorry for these houses here because they are just so close to the pub. I mean, I used to actually live very close to a pub, so I feel their pain. But they've just been there for centuries. And actually, now that I look at it, there's a couple of things missing. So first up, because this is sort of like the local pub, there does need to be a post. There we go. So these post boxes are pretty much on every corner of Australian towns where they are, get quite a bit of foot traffic. So I do need to place one of those down. I'm so happy that there's lots of these assets coming up on the workshop. And now that I look at all this area, I really love this roughed up look there, and I think I might increase that just around some of these edges here. That one. Yeah. Some of these areas require a bit more detail than others. Really happy with how this one turned out. I'm actually going to continue working on this road here by just copying some of these buildings and placing them down just on the road. And I do want to get a couple of larger style ones like that. And because this is an alleyway, it doesn't get as much treatment as the roads do. So I'm just going to really scuff up those edges a bit more. Yeah, so cool. So, and I'm just going to continue just basically copying any of these buildings and just placing them down and just continuing the pattern. We'll probably seen that building a little bit too much. I might even copy that one. Basically just gone through and roughed up a lot of the edges around this area, and it's looking cool. I've also placed down a lot of these houses just to fill in some gaps. I do want to, I have left a couple of gaps because I do want to include some more shops and some more services. I know at the very beginning of this, I did talk about how I wanted to move some people in into this area in this episode, but it's not looking good. Basically, it's taken so long just to get as much. It's basically taken this long just to get this much down, and I think I'm just gonna focus on just detailing this area just for the time being, and then we might actually work on moving some people in properly into the in the next episodes. I plan to do quite a lot more work on this series over the next couple of weeks. In drips and drabs, and just release it to you guys basically as I record. Okay, so I've just plopped down these shops here. I feel like this works best. I mean, this is an area where there's going to be quite a lot of people traveling around, you know, leaving the town, or even on their way to work, or even coming back from work. I think this is a sort of area that a lot of people will be hanging around. So I figured it probably works best for some sort of commercial shop. That's basically what a shop is. I've just done some light detailing in this little area. I didn't want to go too full on, but I did want it to just break up the surface a little bit with some of these decals. Also, a little parking lot at the back, no lines, just like super low key, and a couple of crates and stuff. And of course, because I am detailing this area, I decided to go full on out and actually start adding in some more houses. Again, just sort of plopping down a lot of the same houses we've been seeing quite a lot of before. And then also just going for some more custom ones that, you know, again, not going for super amounts of detail, but still think it looks pretty cool. A couple of other things I've been doing just off camera, and actually we'll make our way up there, because I've actually just started detailing and started putting in some work into this medium strip, because I did want it to have a certain feel to it. So looking at the one on Google Maps, and I really wanted to achieve that kind of like bare earth coming through the grass sort of effect. And the way that I'm achieving that is I'm actually getting this grass decal. And this is actually a mod, so this isn't part of... This isn't like a decal you can download. I've actually just started using this mod. So, and that's actually my grass texture. So I'm just gonna peek that through just that surface there. All right. So with that done, I'm gonna put in some more natives. Yeah. These roads. So for some reason, and I'm looking at Google Maps again, that these sort of inner roads are really quite wide. And, you know, at first I sort of thought that they were wide because a lot of traffic were coming through here. But then I sort of thought that maybe that they were this wide for trucks or lorries that were coming into this area. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I would love some information. If anyone has any information for why these areas are so wide, I decided to follow that same technique and just basically make them into an avenue, so that's, you know, it sort of has the same feeling behind it. I've also placed down this fire station. This is fairly new to the workshop, so I've just placed that down. Very light detail work on that. And also this school here, which is a kindergarten, and like I think it fits in pretty nicely with that colonial look that I'm kind of going for. The last little pieces before I press the play button and watch people trickle into the suburb is I do need some sort of medical, amongst other things, but I do need some sort of medical facility in this area. And being like somewhat of a main road this is, I will place it down somewhere like this. And I don't think I'm going to do much in terms of detail work, because it's all right looking. I might add a couple of things. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. This bit here is very annoying, so I will just cover him up with a tree. Yeah, and that's fine. I think that's pretty good. And like, I think that's about it for this area, for this episode at least. There's a lot more I want to kind of work on off camera, and when I do, for the next episode, I will come back and really work on a bit more of the commercial district for this area. But for the time being, I'm going to press the play button and watch some people trickle in and leave you guys with some cinematics. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode. It's lots of fun being back working on this map and establishing a bit of a community, which is very cool to actually see some people start moving in. Thanks again, guys. Looking forward to working on this map down the track, and I catch you guys in the next episode. See you later.